How do you go about grappling with trauma in a way that ensures that your art feels restorative for you as the artist and it doesn't feel like this drain?
I feel like that's something I actually struggled with when I was, writing out like the sequence of the film. Um, my initial reaction was, oh, maybe, I'll make the bully like a monster or something. And I'm like, you know what? That's not that person was a real person. They had an experience too.
I'm Lo Harris, and you're tuning into One on One with Lo, where I bring in folks from various creative communities to engage in uplifting conversations around how we can show up in our work as our authentic selves. Enjoy the conversation. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, everybody, Sarah Beth Morgan. She is a director, illustrator, and educator based in Cleveland, Ohio, baby. Got that Midwest in you. I was born in Illinois. I know.
Oh,
I
me
know what
too.
Midwestern is.
I was born in
What?
Chicago. I
I was
know.
born in Evanston.
No way. Yeah, no, I don't like know it super well, but my parents lived there for like 10 years and they had me. So yeah,
Oh my gosh,
Midwest.
that's amazing. Well, look, we love a Chicago connect. My dad's family is from Chicago, the South Side.
Nice.
So I love Chicago. I used to love visiting. I was raised in Alabama, went
Oh
there,
wow.
all the time. So it's really nice to see another Midwestern. But I
Yes.
would like to introduce you to everybody. So Sarah Beth is an animation director and illustrator based in Cleveland, Ohio, as I mentioned. As a full-time freelancer and online educator, she enjoys diving headfirst into passion projects, advocating for women in the industry, and listening to what she calls bad music. But I would really like to know if you could just let everyone know like what that is, because I
I
listen to
guess
bad music.
I guess it's not like I wouldn't say it's like bad, but I'm never up to date on music. Like everyone's always like listening to music when they're working, and I'm just
Mhm.
like listening to silence. So I guess you would call silence bad music. Also just like
That's a bit
old like
official.
high school music, yeah. Like so I mean I'm keep I listen to the radio and stuff, but I'm just not like up to date on it. So I guess I would say outdated music is probably a better term.
Look, to me, no music is outdated. I sit there, I go back. I really love jazz. I really love bossa nova. I like love, 90s. I will pick and choose
True.
a song for a song. So if it's new, if it's old, if it's good and I like it, it's going in my pocket and I'm gonna listen to it on repeat
Yes.
over and over and over and over and over.
Okay, I'm not alone.
Yeah, you are not alone. But I wanted to say, I discovered your art, especially based on what we're going to talk about today. I discovered your work here on Instagram, and there was one animation in particular that you created, and I actually let you know how I felt about this one animation when, like, I first connected with you in DMs. There was this duck in a fedora, and mind you,
Oh
this is
yeah.
like the most mundane. This is like, especially considering all the work you've done, this is like the most mundane thing that stuck with me. There's this duck in a fedora. He has like his ear pods in and he's like throwing his neck, jamming out.
Yeah.
And that thing lives rent free in my head to this day. So
Oh my gosh,
I
thank
want you
you.
to know.
That was so fun. I illustrated it and then this company, Story Studio, they like reached out and they're like, "Can we animate this?" And so they did it like in 3D and stuff. And I
Oh,
actually
God.
feel like it's like one of the top things that has been viewed on my Instagram. So I guess it
Well,
makes sense.
for good
Thank
reason.
you.
Like that guy, like he deserves an Oscar. Like he deserves an Emmy. He needs to get his EGOT. Like I don't know what he does, but he has a chokehold on the platform. So
He's great. He's
I
great.
love that. So
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing your time with me today. I'm super excited to have you on one with Lo. And I know that, this duck is like a very mundane thing, but there's so much depth of content to your work. And there are so many important stories that you tell in your work. So I would love to allow you the opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone on your own terms. Could you start by sharing a bit more about yourself, your work, and how you got started?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm an illustrator and director. I'm actually an animation director repped by Hornet, who's based in New York City. And you're in New York, right?
I
Yes.
am.
Yeah, yeah. I when I was in New York recently, I know my friend Amanda got to meet up with you, and yeah,
Yes!
that was so sweet.
I
I was like, oh,
love
I'm
Amanda!
jealous.
Oh my gosh, next time you let me know, girl. You let me know next time. And next time too, I wish that I had just had the foresight to actually go to the film, which we'll talk about the film later in the
Oh my gosh, no
conversation.
worries.
But I would love to next time. Please let me know.
Connect.
Just say you need to be here and I will be there.
Yeah, I'm closer to New York now than I was. So I was in Portland for like 6 years right before I moved here. I actually moved here in like April, so I haven't been here that long. My parents live in Cleveland. But yeah, so I'm a director and well, I'm not an animator. I'm an animation director and an illustrator. But I started in this industry I went to Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia, and I
Good.
really enjoyed that. Yeah, yeah, I loved
I
it.
helped I helped one of my family friends move into SCAD and I got to see the dorms and I'm like, whoa, this is so
Oh,
different from like my dorm experience.
it's
Moving was
it's
kind of crazy.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like its own thing. Like I feel like it was a different kind of art school. I don't know. It was nice. And so then I studied motion media is technically what it was called there. So I didn't really know what motion graphics was before I started. Before that, I was just like, oh, I'll do graphic design or I'll do like photography or something. This is like stuff I did in high school. But then when I got there, there was like some informational meetings and everything, and I discovered it, and it was really cool because like motion graphics and animation are kind of the same now, I would say. But back then it was very much like, oh, like motion graphics, they do title design for movies and stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize people did that. They did like, there's like stop motion stuff and 2D and 3D and like more graphic type stuff, and it just seemed more up my alley. So that's kind of how I fell into that. Took the courses and graduated, and then I worked at the studio in LA for 2 years called Scholar. They were
Mhm.
great. I got a feel for the industry that way, and then I moved into Portland and started working at Oddfellows, which is a really cool animation studio there. Then I went freelance in 2018, and that's kind of how I got my start into like teaching and all of that when I went freelance. So
Yeah,
it's
you have a lot of Skillshare classes, right? And you teach people how to pretty much design for motion, which is its own
yeah,
skill because it requires you to really be in tune with other animators. And I'm so blessed that I learned animation before I started becoming an illustrator because so many illustrators don't really recognize what precautions need to be taken, when you're trying to prepare a file for animation. So that's like a really important skill to know. And for those of you who have not signed up for that class, I highly suggest that you do because it's a really good skill to know, especially when collaborating with others.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel like as an animation director, I'm like, I love you, Lo, because you're like, probably how to set up your files, everything. I feel like that is definitely something that you have to learn. I mean, either, prior to illustration, or you're going to have to reteach yourself how to do it if you already know how to illustrate. I mean, it's something that can be picked up pretty easily, but yeah, it's like a whole other world,
Yeah.
illustration for animation. So
It's an administrative process that many people don't necessarily think about, and there are so many talented animators who might struggle to pull their work into motion because they're just like, what do you mean? All the sprinkles are everywhere. This mask works, right? Take it.
yeah.
It's like, well, I need it like this thing cropped this way. Or like when you export from Procreate to Photoshop, you have to go, well, actually, when you export from Procreate to Adobe After Effects, you have to go in Photoshop and you need to make sure that it's actually cropped, like the layers cropped to the object
Oh
and all
yeah.
the things. Like,
It never crops to the object.
it's never
Yeah.
cropped to the object, which if
Oh
they're
my gosh.
watching, they should update that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Maybe they did and I haven't noticed it. You probably would know better than me, honestly. I've been
They
Procreate for a
haven't.
bit, but okay, cool. Good to know. Um, but yeah, it's just this whole other thing, and I'm really grateful that I got to like learn illustration like as I was learning animation too. Just don't flatten your files, y'all. No flattening.
Don't flat. Just stop.
Yeah,
Stop.
just continuously build it, you know?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
let's get into the first talking point. I'm really interested in talking about how you found your voice in your illustration. I did a little bit of digging into previous interviews you've done, and you mentioned previously that when getting started, you really went out of your way to post your work on social every weekday. And that's a lot of art. That's a lot of art. That's a lot of production. So what did you learn from that challenge, and how has it impacted your trajectory today?
Great question. Thank you. By the way, thanks for listening to my other interviews. You did not have to do that.
Look,
You-
I'm a recovering journalist. I do my due diligence. I work in
Okay.
news. Like, this is what I do.
Well, that was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, so I I feel like I got started on Instagram like before it was like influencer world, you know. I knew that you could like gain a following and whatnot, but my reasoning wasn't for, you know, ad like to like get sponsorships or anything. It was just like I just want my work to be out there. So I think this was like in 2014, 2015, when I was at Scholar, there were some days at work where, you know, like we didn't have projects that we were necessarily on, or like since I was newer, I wasn't like as integral to the team, or I wouldn't say I wasn't integral, but like there were days where I had down days. And
Hmm.
so sometimes I would just be like, okay, I'm just gonna like pump out a bunch of work and then I'll like post them, you know, like consecutively throughout the week. And yeah, I did like 5 days a week, and it was let's just say like I didn't love my work at that point. I was just like, I'm just gonna put stuff out there, and if people like it, that's great. If they don't like it, whatever. And also at that point, I wasn't exclusively posting art. It was like, I mean, it was art, but then I would do like, oh, well, like a sketchbook illustration, then I take a photo of it. I was trying to, my style was different, you know, and I had like some photos that I was posting too. So it was a lot of mixed media content. But I did feel like it really helped me grow as an artist because I got to try different styles. I was like, if I ran out of something to like ideas to draw, I just kind of had to like force myself to do something. However, I don't know if like I would live by that philosophy now. I definitely enjoy my downtime, and I like to um, spend more time on my work than just like one day. But I think it was really nice, a really nice experiment, you know. And then once you know, I had built like a little bit of a following, and then when I got to Oddfellows, I was able to post more like moving work because I was working
Hmm.
on more animated projects. Like at Scholar, I do a lot of pitches, so it was just still frames. And then when I moved to Oddfellows, I was like, oh, like video content, you know? Um, so yeah, I think that helped a lot. Like, you know, everyone knows now like Instagram is now a video app or whatever. So I think like that kind of stuff grabbed people's attention. Um, yeah, I think it just helped me build like consistency, and like it helped me figure out like scheduling, and like, you know, I was more active. I decided I should respond to everyone's comments. You know, I
Yeah.
was trying to be super active. So I think it helped me learn a lot about the app itself. And yeah, I just put all my energy into Instagram.
Well, thank you for actually pointing, because the next question I was going to ask was about how your style changed over the course of that experience. Because I had a very similar experience when I was getting started. I was working in a newsroom actually with Heather Seidel, who is our
Oh
last guest,
yeah.
who actually got to see your film
Yeah,
in
I love
person.
Heather. That's
And
awesome.
Heather and I, were just like always like, just shooting the shit, just having a good time, lady animators. And I was learning a lot just by sitting next to her. But I kind of realized that she walked in with this iPad, and I saw her with this iPad. Oh my God, if I had this tool when I was in middle school, where could my art have gone? So I instantly purchased it, and I realized I don't know what to draw. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. So I created the Low Harris art account, kind of like, actually, I named it Low Harris. My name is Lauren. I named it Low Harris because I didn't want my friends to find it. And that backfired tremendously. And
So
in
everyone
that
calls you low.
yeah, exactly. Like it's like now everyone calls me low. But I literally challenged myself. I remember it was the month of February, and I said, I need to do something consistently. Not necessarily for the benefits of like trying to get the algorithm, trying to do this, trying to do that. But I needed something that I could hold myself to create discipline in my practice as an artist and to really figure out what I like. So I came up with this Instagram art series called 29 Queens. It was a leap year that year. So every day of February, I like drew like a really crappy portrait of a Black woman who I felt like was inspirational in some way and wrote a little blurb about it. And then I posted it. And at the time I was posting it, people be like, oh, that's fun, that's cute or whatever. But no, it wasn't like a thing. And it wasn't until after my work started to blow up after 2020 and the protests and everything that people kind of started hearkening back to and referencing 29 Queens as like this thing, like this official thing, because I was posting consistently. And what I found was that even though I cannot stand behind my style at the time, I really can stand behind the importance of doing a project like that, starting out, because not only did it really train a muscle for me in terms of just putting my work out there and getting over the fear of putting my work out there, but it also kind of gave people a kind of preview into like what I was interested in actually as a person, like what my work stood for. And so to any aspiring illustrators, I always have to put a twist on trying to give advice to aspiring illustrators. To any aspiring illustrators out there, like if you're kind of wondering, oh, should I post my stuff? Like I posted it one time, no one liked it. What's the point of doing it? Please make that our Instagram, change your name if you need to. And just keep posting consistently, even if you hear crickets, because it's not about trying to get instant gratification, but it's more beneficial to how you want to start developing your style and allowing you to really try different things and create Pinterest boards and find your voice as an artist. So I'm really glad to kind of hear that you had a similar experience, Sarah Beth, because I think that that's such an important thing that happen that you could learn that in school, but I think a lot of people don't learn that in school. I think it just takes really just trying.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And like I also feel like at that time for me when I was working at Scholar, we had we were doing pitches for projects, which basically just, but like for anyone listening, basically just meant we had to pitch on projects in order to win them, and once we won them we could do the animation for it. So basically I was just making style frames over and over and over and seeing if they the client liked them or whatever. So it wasn't necessarily for Instagram or anything at that time. It was just okay, I have to make 5 style frames today and in a style I've never done before. And it was just okay, just try new things all the time. And I feel that is eventually led to my style per se, because I was just learning things from different styles. Oh, I like the line weight I used for this one, and then oh, I really liked the subject matter and the concept behind this one, and the colors of this one. So it's just kind of you start learning over time what you like. Because obviously you could look at someone else's art. I could look at your art, Lauren. Do you want me to call you Lauren or
Call me Lo. You can call me Lo because that's more consistent for here. But when you see me in person, you can call me.
Okay, got it. Yes. Yeah, but if I look at your art, I admire it. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But that's not necessarily something I can do. I could look at I don't know, someone like James Jean or an oil painter or something and really admire it. But I'm just oh, this isn't. I can't work that way, or I could work that way, but I prefer to work in a different way. And you just learn that after you try the different styles and the different, techniques. And then I think that's kind of how you start forming your own look and feel, So.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the content of what you're creating is the subject matter, I should say. I love to talk about subject matter because you mentioned that, you like to find ways to really intertwine life experiences within your work. And I can really see, even just glancing at your portfolio, how daily life and the abstraction of daily life and the mundane kind of
Yeah,
it gets in
I got
there.
you.
It gets in there. So into your work and the work that you do. So how do you approach putting pieces of yourself and your life experiences into your work? And do you find that this philosophy carries over into client work as well?
Yeah, great question. I would say a lot of the like emotional conceptual stuff that is in my personal work um, doesn't carry as much over to client work. However, I do think that brainstorming and concepting projects on my own has actually made me a better conceptual thinker for client projects. So I'm not necessarily like, talking about my or like illustrating my anxiety for a client project, but I can be like, oh, like the way that I thought about that one thing on my own project, maybe I can bring it into this client project. But yeah, I would say like with my personal work, it usually comes like if I'm having a really intense emotional reaction to something, or I'm like really stressed and I just feel like I need to like put it on paper. And not always, sometimes I'm just like, oh, this would be funny to draw, or like, oh, I feel really inspired by this event that happened or whatever. But yeah, I'd say like the work that I'm most proud of comes a lot from my like anxiety and trying to
Mhm.
visualize it in like a metaphorical way. Um, and trying to have other people like audience members or viewers like relate back to it and kind of take their own meaning from it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, I mean that perfectly answered the question, and I think it's a good segue into really, opening up the discussion around what it means to address trauma with care in your work as an artist. You mentioned that you're very passionate about working through trauma using your art, and your new film, Between Lines, feels deeply emblematic of that mission. So, if you're comfortable, would you mind sharing with us what the film was about and how you drew inspiration for it?
yeah, totally. So the film itself is based on this experience I had with bullying when I was in seventh grade. I was about 12, 13. Um, and I guess I was 12. I don't know. I like these days, I don't know what age people are. Um, but yeah, I had like this really bad experience with these friends of mine who all of a sudden like decided they weren't going to be my friends. So it was like such a impactful moment in my life for me. It was really traumatic, and it's actually something I didn't really process until I was, maybe like 5 years ago. Honestly, I started working with a therapist. And, I've been to therapy before, but I felt like I was connected with this therapist better. And we started working and looking back at some of my childhood traumas, and it was like, whoa, I didn't realize how much that affected me. Like I was, bullied, so I became very self-conscious, and that kind of affected the way I saw myself for the rest of my life. And I've had a lot of issues with like friendships, and that has like carried over through my entire life after that. Just being very like nervous people are going to leave me or something, and so I felt like I was starting to connect all those dots. And my therapist, like really encouraged me. She was like, you know what, like this obviously is something that really affected you. It could be kind of like a release to make something beautiful out of it. And so I was like, you know what, that's an amazing idea, because maybe I could heal from it and grow. So I think she just meant like draw something, but I was like, no, let's do a 3-minute film. um, and so yeah, the film itself is not like necessarily me as the main character. I kind of wanted it to, relate to anyone who was watching it. I was hoping that anyone who watched it would be able to take something away from it, from their own experience, regardless of if it was like bullying or if they had some issues with anxiety or depression themselves. They could see themselves in it a little bit. And yeah, and then, the film just took off and we had like over 30 women working on it, and it's at film festivals now. So it's kind of crazy. It is like such a healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as an artist, we feel so much and we process so much through our work. That's an extension of our voices. And, I know all too well, the ways in which trauma can inform my own work. And, it's really important, at least in my process when I'm engaging with things, to kind of figure out the best way to re-engage with it in a way that won't necessarily re-traumatize you, you know what I mean? Or like put you back in that position or trigger other people. So how do you go about grappling with trauma in a way that ensures that your art feels restorative for you as the artist and it doesn't feel like this drain or this pain?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question because like I feel like that's something I actually struggled with when I was, writing out like the sequence of the film. My initial reaction was, oh, maybe, I'll make the bully like a monster or something. And I'm like, you know what? That's not that person was a real person. They had an experience too. I need to think of this from a more realistic perspective. Like I don't know how to say this, but just like making it less about the experience and more about the emotion and then how you heal from it. So the end of the film ends on a positive note. There's hope, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then also me as a human, I've recovered and healed from it. So it ends up, hopefully if I present the film somewhere, I am able to talk about it at the same time and kind of give people my own perspective on it so that it's not just like sitting there alone, I don't know. I guess it's a great question because I mean, I definitely think about that a lot. I'm like, I hope this isn't hurting anyone. But at the same time, I've had lots of mothers come up to me after the screening in Brooklyn. It's like maybe 3 people came up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, my daughter's 12 years old and she's going through this right now. And I think she'd really want to see it. So I hope I successfully
Sounds like you did your job. It sounds like you did the right thing. And it sounds like, your work made the impact that it was meant to make for the right people. And, I don't know how much you know about my own background and how my work got started, but I was working in news around 2020, around the time that George Floyd died. I was in the newsroom. I had to create a graphic where it required me, unfortunately, to sit in After Effects and listen to a soundbite of his death and to animate his words to the soundbite. So I had to do that over and over and over. And I'm like the only Black woman on my team. I'm a Black woman in this newsroom. I'm like, the most junior person. And it was a traumatizing experience. And so I remember taking a step from work. I actually called out for a couple of days because I was like, no. And I ended up creating this piece called Justice. And again, this is one of those pieces where the art style, I'm like, but then I will not take it back for anything, the impact that it made. I created this piece. It's very simple. It's almost symbolic of the isolation we felt in the pandemic. A lone woman, fist in the air, mask on, and just the word justice, over her head. She's a Black woman. And I published that piece with really no intention of anyone really reacting super strongly to it. I actually turned off the comments when I published it because I did not want people to give me shit about it.
Yeah.
And I published it. And also another added stressor to add is because I worked in news, I think that there's this antiquated pressure put on journalists to be objective by their companies, when in reality, the storytelling and the things we do, nothing is objective. It's about creating balance, but I felt discouraged from really expressing myself. I felt like I had to show up professionally. So this was like my dirty little secret, creating this art piece, that really reflected my humanity as a Black woman. And it blew up and I was terrified. I was like, leave me alone. I wasn't
Oh my
already, like,
God.
and like all these like ding, 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 everything, it went viral. And but that was kind of the thing that kicked off my career. And I felt a tremendous amount of guilt because of that, because I was like, I don't want an art career based in the death of a man. You know what I
Right.
mean? Based in the death of a person. And I really struggled with that. And I guess like that experience really started to inform the ethos of my work and how I choose to create now, because I find that it's instilled in me this hypersensitivity and protectiveness and care in the way that I like to depict the experiences and the realities of Blackness and womanhood in my artwork. And I find that, when companies come to me and like they want to like capitalize off of my identity, really, you know what I mean? I have to kind of find ways to say, well, how do I do this in a way that honors the women that I know, that honors the women that I love, and isn't a redundant stereotype of
Mm-hmm.
what people think the Black market wants to see. Like, I think
Right.
about like the Walmart thing that they made with like the Juneteenth plates, and it said, "It's the freedom for me" on the napkin. I
Oh
don't
my
do that.
God.
If there were a Black artist in charge of that, they probably would not have done that, especially if they weren't on staff. Like they would have been like, no. And for me, it's like, so I get really protective. And so the ethos of my work is really about making sure that the work that I create serves and minimizes harm to certain communities. So my question for you is, has your experience with that trauma inspired a sense of wanting to protect, of wanting to look out for, of wanting to do right by particular communities in your creative work? And do you find yourself actively pushing against stereotypes and harmful ideas, even as an animation director and client?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say I think I found your work around 2020 when you blew up, and I have to say I really admire your work. And I know that you said you're like not into the style that you had before, but I think it's really powerful. And I also think you've grown a lot, and I really love where you're going with all of your work. So just want to say that quickly
Thank
because I feel
you.
like I haven't
I'm trying
been able
so
to say
hard.
that. No, you're so good. Oh my gosh. Um, but yeah, I guess in terms of trauma, like, so my goal with the film was intentionally like, I don't want to just tell my story. I want this film, I want like girls who went through this or like anyone who went through bullying. The reason I say girls was just because that was my experience. But any gender, anyone could go through something like this. But my goal was like, I want to show this film to people who are like 12 and 13 or currently being bullied, and just like let them know that they're not alone, that they're going to get through it, that they have like there's I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I was going through something like that, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't have other friends that were experiencing the same thing, or they didn't tell me they were. And then my friends who I used to confide in were the ones who were bullying me. So I just was like completely alone. I didn't even like know what was really happening. Nobody went out and said like, hey, like validated me by saying like, hey, it looks like you're being bullied. Like this is not good. Like these people aren't treating you well. And I didn't really process that till I was older, and I feel like if I had seen something or someone had said something to me and that just like validated it out loud, I probably would have been able to process it better. So my whole goal with the film was like, I want this to be a safe film for people who are experiencing it to watch. So I guess with that in mind, I was trying to be really sensitive about what I was putting out there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you had another part to your question about, standing up for, or
Yeah, do
um,
you just find given your experiences and like your perspective, I mean, speaking out is so difficult, especially if you're a woman, BIPOC, queer, and you're a person in this space that has been historically exclusive to you.
mhm,
And your perspective, like, do you find yourself being someone like, I mean, you're an enigma, right? Because you're a young woman who is a leader in animation and you're a director. Like, do you find yourself having to actively push against stereotypes and harmful ideas like in the corporate space. And not to tag on another question, because I know you literally just asked for this one, but I'm also curious, like what advice you would have for someone who wants to tell an authentic story, wants to share an intimate, kind of perspective, and wants to apply that in the work that they do, whether it's their personal work or in corporate work, but they're worried that their voice and they're worried that their perspective is not going to be respected or heard or legitimized in these major creative spaces.
Yeah. I will say, growing my confidence as a director and as like a woman director especially has not been easy. When I started, I think I was so used to schoolwork, you do work, you turn it in and you get a good grade and you don't have to say anything. So I think when I first started in the industry, I was quiet, I was shy, I wasn't confident. And I think that's also a learned behavior that like a lot of women grow up with, because, you're supposed to be timid and I don't know. It's just something.
Not to mention the cross-cultural repercussions when you're a woman who isn't a white woman who stands up for herself, and then the ways that people code that.
Yeah, and exactly. And I was in an even more privileged position because I was a white woman, and I feel like because of that, I was able to grow my confidence a little bit faster, probably. I don't know what your experience was, but I had, people around me, like my bosses, kind of noticed I wasn't really being confident, and they were pretty helpful. They pointed out, they were like, at my first annual review, they were like, I don't know if you're thriving here. You might need to do better. And I was like, whoa. And so that's when I kind of pushed myself to learn how to be more confident. And that was really just fake it till you make it. Unfortunately, I have seen men who are younger than me, or especially white men who are younger than me, or are just brand new on the job, move past me, a lot.
Or they'll look over your shoulder to another white man who's probably your junior and say oh, what am I supposed to do? Actually, you're supposed to talk to her.
Yeah. And it's just it's been really frustrating, and it's so hard because I'm you don't, you're I know that guy's talented. So I can't tell if they just think he's more talented than me, or if he just is in a position of privilege. I can't tell, it's so blurry, the structure. I tried not to think too hard about it, and I just kind of kept pushing. And I think honestly, what really helped me grow as a director and a person in leadership was freelancing, honestly, learning how to talk to different people in different parts of the industry, owning my rate, owning my my skills, and being able to be yes, I can do that, or no, I'm sorry, I can't, I don't know how to do that, so I'm not gonna do it. And just being real with people and being honest. I think that is what really helped me level up. But it's not easy. It took me a while to get there. And I still feel I'm not, even on current jobs, sometimes I'm I don't know if the people who are on my team necessarily look to me as the leader. Sometimes you just never know. So it's a constant battle, I think. But I think, I don't know, I'm getting there.
Yeah, it's not an easy, there are so many nuanced pieces to it, whether it's the circumstances, the identity, and yes, obviously there are especially in the spaces that you're occupying, right, there are some super talented animators who have the right cocktail of opportunity and talent and privilege to kind of exist in these spaces and to kind of glide through these spaces. And so it can kind of, you're gaslighting yourself, where you're just oh, is it this or is it that? And I agree, going freelance, in my opinion, it was very clear, in my experience, it was very clear to me that I hit a wall, in corporate. There was no reality where I would be advancing in skill or in title or in circumstance. And it was really scary for me to be an entrepreneur and to go freelance. And for a long time, even like when I was getting started, I would just wait for brands to come to me and kind of say, we have you in mind for this thing. And of course, they'd always come, for like Black History Month with 3 days before the deadline and an abysmal budget, And so for me, it was like, even in that, it was a learning experience. I was still doing exponentially better than I was in corporate, but I was still kind of having to navigate this kind of like lack of respect. And so for me, it really came down to really questioning, like, am I trying to have a seat at this table, or am I trying to build my own table? And if I'm trying to build my own table, what resources do I have over here to rig up something and start having my own little feast? Because when people see that I'm doing me, and when people see that I'm creating something out of my own well of inspiration, and they see how much fun I'm having by myself, they're going to want to join in on that. It's like you're literally throwing a party and everyone's like, oh, that party looks fun, I want to get in on that. And then that's when people, start respecting you, like, which kind of sucks, right? Because we're taught, what I mean, that you go to a job, you work your way up, you pledge your loyalty, you become a banner man for this, what I mean, company, and then they're going to reward you eventually. But that's not always the case for everybody. And so it is incredibly important, for marginalized identities in the creative industry to really, like, not only find their space and create a space for themselves to really make their voice heard, but to also work together. I think that there's unfortunately a tremendous amount of gatekeeping in the creative industry, and there's this sentiment that, oh, like, I could recommend so and so, but if they get this job, then they're going to see that they're better than me, and then they're only going to work with them. And that's just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's hungry for some really cool art. No company is just going to stick with one artist unless they're literally on staff. And there's enough for everybody to eat. But if we're not coalition building, and if we're not working together, then it's going to be harder for, like, younger creatives to come in and make something of themselves too.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of gatekeeping. Like I even as like a person who was freelance and directing already, I was trying to get repped. I got turned down by like 3 companies, and there's this one company that reached out to me, and it seemed like a good deal, but then I heard from a friend that they weren't the best to work with, like they were like kind of sketchy or whatever. So then I turned it down, and I think in my email I was just like, I'm not ready yet, or like I'm not interested at this point or something. And the like boss guy, I don't remember what his position was. His response to me was like, yeah, on second thought, I don't think you're ready yet. And I was just
That's
like
so shady for no reason and embarrassing. I hope he has diarrhea today.
Explosive, please. Like, oh my God. I was like, okay, you're showing your true colors, because they were like all, like trying to like get me to join, and like we're being super nice, and then all of a sudden I said something that they didn't like, and they were like, never mind. I don't know. It's just, there's stuff like that all over the industry, and if anyone here listening experiences that, doesn't mean you're not worth it. Doesn't mean you're not good at what you do.
We're not crazy either. It happened. Yeah. Don't let them tell you it didn't happen. It happened.
Yeah. No gaslighting.
No gaslighting, no gatekeeping, no girl bossing.
Yeah.
Not here.
Yeah, not allowed.
Well, yeah, not allowed. So, okay, so let's transition. And again, I want to remind everyone too that, we're going to be approaching a Q&A opportunity soon. So if you have a question for Sarah Beth or myself, please go to the lower right-hand corner and click the question button and ask a question. We can answer it right here on the live. We're kind of coming up on our time soon, so I want to make sure that if anyone has a question, that they are heard. But hopefully the live so far has addressed some of your concerns and just let you know that you're not crazy. So let's talk about healing through art. and kind of like call to actions and the importance of that. Because I noticed, from the trailer and from reviews discussing between lines, that the story you tell not only addresses the impact of bullying, but it also talks about the aftermath and the recovery that comes after. And so my question to you is, how important do you think it is for an artwork to provide a call to action or a demonstration of what healing and next steps can look like after trauma?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely important if you're going to put something out there that could potentially re-traumatize someone. Obviously you want to give them tools to figure out, what the next steps are. Not to say that you can't put work out there that's dark or like something that, means a lot to you that maybe you never found a solution for. That's not wrong. But, if the purpose of your art is to help other people heal, then yes, I think that's super important. And like on our website and everything, we've been partnering with this nonprofit, the Bloom Foundation. They work with young girls to like work through their trauma. And one of the things I love about their program is that they're not necessarily being like, here's how to stop the bullying, or like, here's like what you can do to be better. It's like their whole thing is like, we're just going to talk about it, And I think that even just opening up the conversation for people to recognize that something has happened to them, and then giving them a safe space to talk about it is like, I mean, it's not more than enough, but it's, that's starting something, and like being there for people. Like, I think anybody who watches the film, I want them to know that like they can reach out, or there's this amazing team of 30 women who worked on it who have potentially experienced the same thing. And like, we're here for them. So I would hope that, other people who are putting out similar work are creating tools or giving people who are watching their work tools to heal. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about, my own work as well, and just like how I like to kind of address my Blackness, my work is very into the idea of Black joy. And this is a very important distinction, because I think when people hear Black joy, they think it means like, oh yeah, go get your nails done, go pay for capitalistic forms of self-care, like throw ass in the club, like have a good time. And that's amazing. I love that for everyone. But I think that my idea of Black joy is not in ignorance of what is happening and the trauma that happens, but more so in spite of the trauma that happens. So I never try to, as an artist, plug my ears and just say good vibes only, good vibes only, good vibes only. Like there's no place like home. Like those ruby slippers ain't clicking. So for me, like, you know what I mean? It's really important to have like a substantive, futuristic approach to the work. So, for example, when people want to talk about Black History Month, I personally think it's less productive to draw a picture of Martin Luther King, and way more productive to really think about what does it mean to invest in Black futures. Because I think that that's like, in that way, thinking in that way is more of a tool, because you're going to the next step. You're acknowledging the past, you're acknowledging the struggle, you're acknowledging these things, but let's get practical and let's like offer our viewers or offer the consumers of an artwork the opportunity to dare to imagine. Because what you're doing, I mean, art and STEM and all these different things, like none is more important than the other. My artwork could inspire some inventor to create something that completely changes the impact of whatever my artwork was concerning. So really kind of giving people the opportunity to look ahead and to imagine and to kind of provide a next step. And I recognize as an artist, when I put it out there, it's not gonna automatically be, I guess, understood the same way that I would understand it. I take solace in knowing that people will interpret it how they want. But I do think it is important to put in, my intention and let people do with it what they will.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the one thing, I mean, not the one thing, a big thing I like about your presence on social media too, is that like you're putting your amazing work out there, but you're also putting yourself out there. You're telling people, you're having these live conversations, you're like writing these amazing captions to go with your work so that it's not just like completely standalone all the time. Like people know that they can reach out to you and that you're a friendly person. And like I think that's, I mean, at least with in the age of social media, like I think that is also a helpful way to like help people heal, you know, in some way, even if they're just seeing that you're thriving, you know. I think that is like, I don't know, a nice benefit of that social media aspect, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to all of the audience members, again, I just want to remind you that we're about to approach the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Sarah Beth about her work or practice, any advice, put it in the questions below. There's a little question button. You can tap it. You can type in your questions like tippy tippy tap, and then it'll pop up for me. And then I'll say, I have a question. And then she'll answer. It's very lovely feature.
Yeah, I didn't
So
know that existed.
yeah, it makes it so much easier than like looking through the chat, you know. And every time I look at the chat, I like see something where I'm like, this is questionable. Like someone was like, y'all should smile more. And I'm
Oh,
like,
I saw
no,
that.
I'm actively trying not to
Like,
smile.
no.
So anyway,
Yeah.
can you please talk to us? Like, so let's talk about community and the impact that it has on healing in the artistic process. You mentioned earlier that you worked with a team of 30 women to create your film. Can you talk to us about what that process looks like and what having access to that community meant for you, especially considering how important this project is to you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I feel like it was amazing because it happened during COVID, basically, like while we were on lockdown. I originally thought our project, I was like, oh, you know what? I want it to be like a small, tight knit group of women, slash like non-binary folks, like just anyone who wanted to join. And I was like, we'll be nice and tight knit. We'll be able to like confide in each other. You know, a lot of the people who started on the project were able to relate to the film. Like anytime I showed them like the storyboard with the music and stuff, they were like, wow, this just like speaks to me. So it was really nice to like start the project that way. But then during COVID, like the pandemic, like we literally started in January and then March, you know. So everyone weirdly, like animation got kind of busy during that time because live action shoots like all shut down. So everyone was working really hard and didn't have time for for like a full investment in the project, which is totally understandable. So I was like, you know what? Let's just like keep tacking people on. It'll be great, and then we'll get to create this like amazing network of people that can like talk to each other during the pandemic and like work on something together, like try to heal together. And I think that was like my favorite part of the project. Like the art itself was cool, I guess, but like having a community to interact with and like meeting people from different backgrounds, from different countries, from, you know, people who speak different languages. Like it was just really cool to like hear, to meet new people. Like I'd reach out to friends and I'd be like, is there anyone you really like working with that I haven't met before? And then, you know, I'd add them onto the project. So I think in a way it was healing because the whole process, like the whole idea behind the project was like me being left behind. And then like in the end it was like, oh, there's just like this giant group of loving people working together now. And it's like we've created even more of a community than I ever could have imagined. So I think that part itself was super healing. And then like I'm hoping, you know, that other people who worked on the project feel the same way. I have heard from like Taylor Janssen, Rebecca Hamilton, who were like managing the project with me. Taylor was animation director and Rebecca was producing the project. I think like they became like some of my best friends during the project because like we couldn't leave our houses and we were like, let's just Zoom all the time, like do a Zoom happy hour. And like that in itself like healed me. So I don't know. Yeah, it was just like a great community. And then I hope that, you know, on our website now, the Between Lines website, I'm hoping that those women get more work from being on the project there's like a directory on our website now, basically like here's their website, here's like, you know, what shots people worked on. And like hopefully that just creates more connections in the industry between women. Because I just feel like that's something that's lacking in our industry. It's like even being on like jobs at companies, like the list of freelancers they have is like a lot of men. Like it's not like men are very talented too. I'm not saying they're not, but it's just like I try to actively now think like, oh, this person worked on my project. Could they work on my client project? You know, like just trying to like lift other women up. So
and it makes everything so much more rich. You know what I mean? There's so much power in, I guess, like visual diversity in terms of like who's coming up with ideas, you know, because, yeah, like, I mean, you don't have to be black to draw a black character. You don't have to be white to draw a white character. But I do think that there is something to be said about really like kind of channeling that those like visceral kind of like cultural references and experiences, and taking the scents and the sights and like the familiarities, you know what I mean, from your life as a particular kind of person, and bringing that into a production visually. I think there's so much power in that. And I think that when you have a staff that's like mainly focused on, can you throw keyframes, yes or no, who are the best keyframe throwers, you really miss out on a wealth of cultural knowledge and expression. And the work can start to feel sterile because it's like, yeah, this is technically good, but like, does it make me feel anything? No, you know?
right.
So
Yeah.
that's so important.
And I also feel like it adds like checks and balances too. Like, I was looking to hire this amazing animator on the project. She's Indian, and so when I showed her the style frames, the initial style frames, the main character had darker skin, and I wasn't necessarily thinking of her as like a person of color, but as a white person, that was totally my mistake, you know. And she pointed out to me, she's like, why is your main character a person of color? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like that's not my story.
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
You know what? Okay, I had like that like Instagram timer on my phone for like an hour. It was like, you've reached your
Oh,
limit.
yeah. I respect it. I respect that you're trying to get off this app and go live your life, girl. Let me let you get your summer back.
No, it's not. I'm fine talking. It's just I always am like, more time, please. Anyways, I didn't mean to cut that off. Very important conversation, but it was great to have, you know, people from different backgrounds come on and like, you know, look at it and be like, does this feel like accurate, or like, are you telling the story you want to tell? Because obviously I am a white woman, so I don't want to try to tell someone else's story. So I was trying to be very conscious of that, and I went and like corrected the mistake and like changed the skin tone and everything. And I just wanted to make sure that I was like not telling someone else's story.
And that's, I mean, it takes a lot to really own up to that and to act on that, because I think sometimes people get defensive and no one wants to be wrong. But I love being wrong because that means that I can be right later on.
Learn from it. Yeah.
So we did get a question, and I want to make sure the question can get in. So I'm just going to let this up. So someone asked, would you prefer working independently as an artist or working in a group with other artists? Which do you prefer?
Group, I think. That's a great question. It depends on the project. So like if I'm just doing an illustration for myself, I love just drawing, you know. I'm like, oh, I have this fun idea. There's the freedom to do it on your own time and your own pacing. But for a work project, definitely I would prefer to be on a project with other people. Just because I personally, I don't really animate much myself, and like I think other people are so talented, and I want to harness them to harness their talents and like bring it into the project, you know. And I think like none of my work would be animated so well if there weren't amazing people working on it with me. It honestly is really cool to like see your work come to life in a way you didn't expect, you know, like maybe I had one idea for a transition or something, and then an animator who's like super talented comes in and she's like, oh, you know, like what if we did it like this way, and there's like this complete change of perspective, and then we did all this, and I'm just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. So I feel like it really helps broaden your perspective and you learn a lot more when you're working with other people. Um, so yeah, I think probably would work with other people. What about you? I'm
Look,
curious.
people, I actually, so I'm actually trying to step away from animating my own work as much because I really want to focus on the illustration and I really want to focus on creating these fantastical scenes. And oftentimes I found myself saying yes to projects where they would get me to do a full animation
Oh
and art
no.
and like fully drawing, designing characters, like drawing all the style frames and animating it all by myself, and I'd only get like 7K. And it wasn't until I realized, like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? That's wrong.
Yeah. And you
So
don't realize
I,
that until you're working with someone else and they're like, yo,
exactly.
you
And
should have
I would
charged more.
also prefer to work with someone else too, just as you were saying, because it adds a new perspective. I have this idea, I have this vision, and I have this ability to really accommodate animators in my illustration practice. But I believe in deference to expertise. I think that the best things are made when people feel empowered to give the best of themselves and they feel respected. And so for me, I'm never going to work with an animator who is super talented and tell them give them like bark marching orders at them. Like, you're
Right.
not an extension of my hands. I want you for what you bring to the table. And if you see the potential, or if you feel like I should redraw something to better accommodate this new potential and motion, I will do that. I trust them to do that. And so that's something that I strive to do more of. I strive to do a little bit more directing, a little bit more,
Yes.
like working with other animators to kind of bring some of these things to life so that I can really put more effort into the illustration side of things. And also, before, I know someone actually asked another question that I don't get, but uh, it says, I'm just gonna tap it up. Do you like
I,
Asuka or Anayami? Ayanami?
okay, I can't see them, so
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. It says Asuka or Ayanami, which I don't know if those are characters from a show that
oh,
you might like.
they might be anime characters. I'm not sure, but I don't watch enough anime to know.
Oh yeah,
So.
me either. I'm so sorry. Well, all right. So, well, okay. To wrap it all about, I know that we're 3 minutes over time, so I'm gonna start wrapping it up. But I would like to thank you so much, Sarah Beth, for coming and joining me today. And I would like to ask if you could let us know how we can watch your film Between Lines in the future and how we can support you in general.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My film, the screenings are available on the web, like the listings for the screenings are available on our website, betweenlinesfilm.com. There's a trailer there, and then we'll probably be releasing the full thing early next year. It's taking forever, I know. But then, yeah, you can also like reach out to me directly on Instagram or email me. My email's on my website. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you. And then hopefully in the future you can watch Between Lines.
Yay! Thank
Yay!
you so much for joining me. Everybody, if you're watching, I'm sure a lot of you are already, go ahead and follow Wonderful to see lovely directorial work, lovely illustrations, Between Lines, and also check out her classes. She does teach people how to draw for animation with animation in mind. If you're interested in my work, I'm at @LoHarris_art. I do a lot of work that champions confidence, vibrance, and joy, and I also give advice to creatives and creative entrepreneurs about how they can really stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves as creatives. And thanks for tuning in to One on One with Lo. This typically happens twice a month. This time we had it 3 times a month because I had to do some rescheduling around, and we don't know who our next guest is going to be for August, but we're wrapped for July, and just follow along and stay tuned to see who we talk to next. Thank you so much, Sarah Beth.
Thank
And I
you.
really appreciate you coming on. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. And I hope y'all have a lovely day.
Hey, thanks for watching. Follow along for more inspirational content.